Hello, hello, and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And today we have I'm going to call it an incredible episode for you. That I've said many, many times that it's all about love, and it's all about helping people live better lives and giving back. And with me today is Lynell Gordon. Lynell, welcome to Finding Better, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me,
For
John. We're going to have
sure.
fun.
Yeah. So here's the thing. We're going to talk about that. What we're going to talk about today is going to change your life if you let it. And I know this because it has changed mine and the lives of many people close to me. And it has to do with forgiveness. So listen, before you roll your eyes, there's a twist at the end of this that you're not going to want to miss. And remember that this is all about finding better. Um, and this episode will move mountains for you if you let it. So, with that, Lynell, you have been an entrepreneur most of your life and most of your career. And, your life has not been an easy one for sure. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit, let folks know who you are, and share that chapter in your life that that you went through as you built your software company and that whole episode.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, just like you've said. And I think all of us who have been entrepreneurs, especially if you've been in partnerships, you know the struggles that go on there. I was in a 50-50 partnership for a long time until I eventually bought my partner out. But in the 90s, um, the late 90s, I started a software company with a business partner and was very fortunate, had a lot of favor and a lot of hard work in the vacation rental industry.
Yes, you did. I was part of that. And yes, yes, ma'am. You kicked butt for sure.
There was a lot of work, but it was so much fun, and it still is a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I love working. I think there's just so when you do something that you love, it's just not like working, as you're well aware.
Yeah.
So I had a difficult partnership. My partner was not easy to get along with. It was a very difficult time. It was very traumatic. There was a lot of, we were involved personally at the beginning, which was, it's very difficult. Number one, it's difficult for partners, whether you're romantically involved or not, to be in business. But if you're romantically involved, it was a business relationship as well as a personal relationship. And there was a lot of, it was very emotionally abusive. Um, and I don't say that to diss my partner. He was an orphan. He came up very hard. His mother, like his stepdad, dropped him off at the police station, and he was picked up by a social worker and ended up in an orphanage and spent most of his life feeling that he was not worthy and not loved. And I got to tell you something. If you don't love yourself, it's really, really hard to love other people, really.
Unbelievably hard. And I'll tell you, and people know this about me. One of my favorite songs on the planet is Whitney Houston's Greatest Love of All. Learning to love yourself, it is the greatest love of all. And I'll tell you something, for a lot of people, including myself, it was a hardest love to embrace.
Mhm.
And so yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So he's not, he wasn't a bad person, and I don't
Hmm.
think of him in that way. There were a lot of bad things that happened. A lot of very abusive things that happened, and things that really. I'm going to write a book, and you can read about it in the book because they're just
Yeah,
things
it
that
is book worthy for sure.
I
Yeah.
may discuss. I may discuss some of them. Some of them because you're the only person actually I've shared that with, John. Uh, I'm
Wow.
going to share this because I think it's hilarious.
Okay.
We did this. We started to do the same interview about 3 or 4 months ago,
Yes, we did.
and I think I shocked the tar out of you because you knew me, but you didn't know anything in the
I
background.
exactly. I did not know what was. Yeah,
And at the end of
exactly.
this show, John said, "Lynell, He was very quiet, and I knew that I'd surprised him. These are part of the things I'm going to put in my book. And John said, Lynell, I think I'm going to have to check with our attorneys before we post this. And I said, it's not going to be a problem, John, because the person we're speaking of is no longer alive.
Yeah.
So my partner passed away last year, actually. And he wasn't my partner at the time. I had purchased him out a few years before. We had a very bitter ending between us. But here's the thing. Now, I didn't have, we were wildly successful. And then when I took back over the company, and he literally, I had been, I had, we ousted him from the company, the chairman of the board and myself and the rest of the attorneys involved, because of things that had happened. And I won't go into those. I'll go into those in the book, but I won't go into those there. He did not have he didn't handle things on the straight and narrow, just going to say it that way. And there were problems because of that. I think he thought he was doing the right thing. I don't think he was a wicked, evil person. But here's the part. It's easy for me to forgive him for those things that he did to me. And there's a plethora. But it was really hard for me to forgive myself because I had a young son involved. Now, ladies, if you've been in abusive relationships, or men, and you have children,
Yep.
you've walked through those, but let me assure you, you, your children, and your family have all walked through this. Your family is concerned about you all the time. They're concerned about your safety. They're concerned about your mental health. They're concerned about the stability in your life. They're concerned about your future. And when your children are emotionally abused, and I'm going to give a story for this. So let me tell you why I had such a hard time forgiving, and you don't know this story. No one knows this story. Christmas one year, we were working really hard to build this business. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've turned out to be, it's quite a gift that I have, but it wasn't, I didn't know that at the time. God knew that, but I didn't. And we were building the business. We were spending every moment there. My kid, I stayed home and he went to school, of course. And the holidays we all spent together. So we were spending Christmas together one year. Christmas was very difficult for my business partner. For my partner, it was a very sad time for him because he didn't have family.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally, he sabotaged all of the holidays. One year during the holiday, we broke up. It was just very traumatic. Another year during the holidays, he just caused such a scene at the family Christmas. It got to the place where no one wanted him around for holidays, that, my family. So if we wanted to do something, we had to do it together because it was really, he would unintentionally sabotage and just make it a horrible time because he was so unhappy. And so this Christmas, we had a beautiful Christmas. My son had wanted like a new watch, iPod kind of electronic watch at the time, whatever it was. And I think he was 11 years old. And my partner got very upset with him that day, as often happened during the holidays. And he brought Heath, my son, into the bedroom where we were and Heath had his little gifts up on his dresser. And he picked up that watch. And with Heath watching on and screaming, he began to hit that watch, to beat it into pieces. And he tore it into pieces.
Why?
Because he was upset with Heath, because Heath had not pleased him in some way.
Okay.
They were one time they were putting batteries into, and this was the final time that I ever let him have anything to do with my son. We're putting batteries into a device of some sort. And Heath was trying to do them in the very specific way that my partner wanted me to do it. Instead, I think he put him in backward in some way, shape, or form, and it angered him so much he slapped him in the face. That was it for me.
No.
So you talk about having guilt because you're in an emotional abusive situation. You can handle yourself, but when it comes to your son And your children? No. And I said to Heath, you never have to talk to him again. Now I'm in business with this guy and I'm
And
angry with him. I cared about him very deeply. I loved him. And so it was a really hard thing for me to completely separate everything because I had to see him every day for business. And,
my goodness.
but I said to my son, you never have to talk to him again. You never have to see him. You never have to be in the car with him if you don't want to again. It's over between you and he. You never have to put up with that, Heath. And Heath, it's very interesting. This past week, we were talking about this because there's a lot of healing that has to go on. My son he saw a lot of therapists and I did too, and whatever. But we were talking about this past weekend and he said, he sent me birthday emails trying to reach out to me every year until he died. So he did. He died of brain cancer, so he knew he was dying. And I don't think he ever loved himself, which is really sad. But for me, I look at the scriptures that God gives us in Psalms 103:12, where he says, as far as the east is from the west, that's how far I removed our sins from us. And I believe that, when you ask for forgiveness, that God forgives us. I especially love Yom Kippur. It's my favorite holiday in the world because that's what it's about. It's all about forgiveness, and it's about repentance. And so he never repented to me. He never apologized for
Why
those
was
things
he
that he
why
did.
why did he reach out to Heath every year? What was it? What was he trying to accomplish with that?
Well, here's the thing. You seem to think, people seem to think that because they're mean to you and they're angry and they're ugly, and they're emotionally abusive, that they don't love you. They love you as much as they love anything. They don't love them. They love you as much as they love themselves, but they don't love themselves either. I think he loved Heath as much as he could. I really do. He
Mhm.
was just very abusive and I mean, I've got dozens of stories here that I could tell. Some of them that are much more scarring than even being
Well,
slapped
yeah,
by him. But yeah,
and I
so
can see it in your eyes as you're talking, the pain that you're experiencing just sharing this. And you said earlier that your partner wasn't a bad or a wicked person. But, the thing that shocked me 4 months ago when we first had this conversation is he did really bad and wicked things.
he did.
And so, that, and there's a distinction there, right? I mean, I'm the optimist in humanity as you are. And
We had yeah.
but and I know, and you don't have to share any of those experiences here, but I'm seeing a lot of that welling up in as you're sharing the story with Heath.
We had a nickname for him. We called him Ewum.
Ewam,
Ewum. Evil, wicked, unkind monster. That was his nickname.
evil, wicked, unkind monster. His nickname was
Mm-hmm.
Ewam.
Ewum. Yeah.
You didn't tell me
Yeah, no, I didn't tell you that.
that. But I
No,
can
but
understand that.
yeah.
From based on what I know, I can certainly understand.
So when I say he wasn't a wicked person, he did a lot of wicked things. How do you
Yeah,
define a wicked person? I think that inside his heart, I don't think he realized how evil the things were that he was doing. I think
yeah,
he was just, I don't know. I can, and look at what I do. This is what women who love people that they are in abusive situations do. They justify. They totally do. Is there any justification for what he did? None. And did karma or God, I know it was God, but you can call it anything you want.
sure.
Did he receive payback for what he did? Oh yes. The story is a very happy ending story about someone who did wicked things that God really dealt with. And I believe God did. But when I say that, with God, he removes our sins as far as the east is from our west, and he doesn't remember them. He remembers them no more, it says. So that's something I try to live by. Now, when we met 3 or 4 months ago, like 4 months ago, you asked me something. What did you ask me, John, that just blew me away?
Well, okay. I'll say it. After I asked you two questions, And my first question was, have you found it in your heart to forgive him, your partner?
Hmm.
And then after that,
And
I
I said,
asked you,
yes, absolutely. No
you
problem.
said yes, you said
Yeah,
yes.
that was no
And I
biggie.
and I asked you, have you found it in your heart to forgive yourself?
And that was a big no, big no.
Yeah, you said
And the,
absolutely not. Those
yeah,
were you, those were your words. And I went, ooh, okay. Maybe we can
yeah.
do something here and help.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about finding better, and
Okay.
let's talk about finding forgiveness for yourself. So I could forgive him for things that he did to me and to Heath. I did, but I didn't forgive myself for putting my son in that situation.
Yeah.
That's very difficult to do because there's the emotional damage. There's emotional damage that he has to deal with as an adult, and it's
Right.
really been
Right.
hard for him. And there are things that were deeply driven in him that are still there that he struggles with even now
Yeah.
because of that abuse. But I have forgiven myself. I did everything I could to to protect him. I did everything I could, especially after bad situations happened, to say, I'm going to empower you. Even though you're 11 years old, you're empowered. This is your decision. You can do X, Y, or Z. But you have to understand something too. When you handle it that way, children are inherently good and forgiving,
Yep.
and they will forgive. You have to be careful not to just give them the power and say whatever you want. Moms, you have to step up, or dads, and you have to say, okay, I'm sorry, but you're no longer allowed to see this person, or you're no longer allowed to be in even though, because they forgive. And we don't want them to be further abused because of that situation.
So in your case, you said earlier that you told Heath, if you don't want to get in the car with him, if you don't want to see him, if you don't want to have anything to do with him, you don't have to. So in
Right.
that moment, you gave Heath the choice, right? But at the
Yeah,
same time, it sounds like you also reinforced
absolute.
some of that with and thou shalt not.
So now you
Yeah.
know why he got emails every year, because my partner blamed me for taking away Heath out of his life. Heath went to private school. He went to private boarding school. There was no way I could disentangle myself from the business at the time.
Hmm.
And so after 2 years, he went to private boarding school, to some of the best education that you could have, which turned out to be very good for him. He went to two separate schools, and he loved them at the end. He was very happy. Um, and I think it was the best thing. I believe that God guided that choice, but it was really hard for me to forgive myself. And there's one thing to hold yourself accountable, and we have to hold ourselves accountable for things that we do, period, whatever they are. I believe that God holds us accountable for our actions and for the intents of our heart. But moms out there who have been in situations and your kids are already grown, or maybe they're not, maybe they're going through it right now. You need to find forgiveness in your heart for yourself. You need to take steps to protect your children, of course. That's number one. But I think, um, you know, I would hope most mothers do that. Empower your children and help them to get professional help to walk through
Yes.
any issues that the kids may be having. But definitely take the time to reflect on your behavior, and change it if you're not happy with the way you're behaving toward it. But you have to get to a place where you forgive yourself, because
And
there's
that
such great freedom.
and we're okay, so talk about that. Talk about that because you started that part of your journey 4 months ago.
Hmm.
And I'd love to hear what you went through when you went, ooh, no, to absolutely not, from absolutely not to now you're encouraging others to do it. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
wonderful. What did you go through?
Well, number one, I think it's a process. I think we
Mhm.
probably walk through that process um, all of our lives, the rest of our lives, especially when we think about our kids. But for me, the way I did it was this: I did a lot of self reflection on my behavior during that time. and what I did to insulate my son from the situation and my family from the situation, quite frankly. And I look at the things that I did, the choices that I made so that he would be protected and taken care of. And I recognized the fact that that's what I was doing, is taking care of him, and that there was nothing that I could do to prevent the situations from happening because I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no idea
Right. Right.
what this guy was capable of. I didn't even
Mm.
know what he was capable of until after um, I left the business and ended up having to come back. Remember, I mentioned that I had to come back into the business.
Right.
Um, I didn't even know what he was capable of until I came back. Uh, and there were some situations that happened where I had forensic evidence of conversations that had taken place and things like that. I had no idea he was capable of things like that. And let me just say something. Okay, so you heard me say he's not an evil person because that's how I think in my heart. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
just what I think in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people, after reading the book and after reading the things that have happened, will probably not think on those same lines. Um,
In other words, we'll actually think he was an evil person.
yes,
Yeah.
probably,
Mm-hmm.
probably. I think anybody that is capable of considering murder is, or considering things that are, um, uh, yeah, I think
Yep.
that,
Yep.
but think about it this way, John. How many times have you said, boy, I wish that person wasn't in my life, no matter who it is? You may not be actually contemplating situations that would contribute to their demise. And, I have to think in my heart that the things that were said and the things that came up from conversations, maybe they were just entertaining the idea. Because after all, they never, nothing ever came from it, never went through with it. And so, you know, how many people say, I wish they were dead? Okay, a lot of people. So what I'm asking is for some grace here for my partner,
Yeah.
from grace here,
Yeah.
because maybe he just got caught up in the minute. He was a brilliant man, just a brilliant man.
He
And
was.
yeah, so take it with a grain of salt there.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what? Here's the thing. Um, my audience will give him grace uh, if you ask them to.
I ask you
And
to.
and you just did. You just did.
Absolutely.
It's just, I mean, it was just unbelievable um, what you went through. And I'll just say, and he, um, a lot of people saw it, right? A lot of people in
They
your life
did.
saw it.
They did.
And but at the same time, and it's really interesting that you bring up, I'm obviously not a woman. I can't, I've never experienced, and therefore I cannot relate to an abusive relationship. And I've been blessed that way. And so, as I think through what you went through, I mean, I understand that a lot of women out there might feel trapped. They might feel like they don't deserve better, like they have no choice. Um, and what do you say to those women?
The lack of choice is a huge one. I think a lot of people like myself are in situations and they don't see a way out. There doesn't look like there is a way out. For instance, with me, the business was all that was. I mean, I eventually walked away from the business and started something new. Let me be frank. It got to the place that I had to. But I will tell you, there's always a way out. If you don't
Yeah,
think there's a way out, you need to email me and let's talk about it. And I will help you because there's always a way out of situations, John. We may think it looks hopeless,
right,
but I will
right.
tell you that it's not. There is never a hopeless situation unless you're forcibly being held against your will in the bottom of a basement. And even then, I pray that God would give people that are in those situations hope. But if you're in a situation with a loved one who's abusing you, whether it's your wife or your husband or even your children sometimes can be that way, there are strategies that um, you can work on. But let me just tell you this: there are people that won't change. My partner was a narcissist. He had narcissistic disorder. I am completely convinced that that was his issue.
Hmm.
Um, I thought he was, a lot of people thought that he may be, what's the one where you're hot and cold? Where you're
Bipolar.
bipolar. A lot of people suggested that he was bipolar, that knew him, that got to know him, some of the employees. And I thought, no, I don't think so. I think he's just narcissistic.
Mm.
And I
Might have
think
been
he hated
both.
him. I think he hated himself
Oh,
a lot. But there is hope in those situations, guys, because there's always a way out. You don't have to live in it. I know it, you think financially there's no other way, but there's always another way. It just takes courage to step out. It took a
yes.
lot of courage for me just to walk away from my business. It did. That was a very difficult situation. And that's how I got out. So, I, I just had really spent time praying about it. And my faith really helped me through the whole. I could not have gotten through without my faith. I couldn't, because I felt disempowered. I felt helpless, but I knew that God would make a way for me. I just had faith because I read a lot of the Psalms and Proverbs at that time. I spent a lot of time in Psalms and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, knowing that God had a plan for my life and
That's
that
right.
he would make the road even in front of me. He would cause it to be level so that I could walk in the way to walk out. And I did. And I got to tell you, I got a lot of flack from people who said, you can't just walk away from your business. I said, yeah, I can. Not only that, but I felt like I had to.
Sure.
There was a tipping point in a relationship. And you guys that are in abusive relationships, there's a tipping point. There comes a place where you say, okay, I have to do something. Don't feel helpless. There's a way out. And so
Yeah.
I simply walked away from the business and said, okay, I'll start over. I'll just start all over and start my own business elsewhere. And I did that.
Lynell, you know this about me. And one of the things I really encourage people with is that it's always your choice. It's always your choice. I've gotten a lot of pushback from that, and because a lot of people feel like they're in a trap situation or they don't have a choice or things like you always have a choice. And this is not, when I say that, it's not about blaming anybody that, you've made the wrong choices. What I want to do is empower people that says no matter where you are, no matter what's going on in your life, you have a choice to get out of it. You have a choice. You have the power. We all have the same 6 or 7 inches between our ears. It's called your brain. And and you're everybody is amazing. Everybody is amazing. And you found it in your faith and you found it in prayer. And I encourage people, a lot of people, to do that too. I pray every day. It's an amazing part of my life. Let's circle back just for a little bit. Once you found it in your heart to forgive yourself, with what Heath went through, what you felt like before that he's went through, what did that change you? Did that give you a different feeling? What happened?
It makes you feel like there's a weight off of your shoulders. There's a freedom in accepting yourself and saying, I did everything I could. And I know I did. And I have to say, it's a daily thing to forgive yourself. When that thought, it is.
It is.
No, it is. When that thought comes up, like when I remember those things that happened, or something happens with my son, like did this weekend where we were talking about it, um, I have to remember, okay, Lynell, you did everything you could. You are not a bad person because you allowed your son to be exposed to this. You would be a bad, very bad person if you continued after abuse to allow your child to be abused, in my opinion. So don't be a bad person, forgive yourself and get out of the situation.
There you go.
I
There
don't
you
really
go.
mean it that way. There are people that feel trapped and they really feel like they can't do anything. But what John
Yeah.
just said is really important. He's not saying that if you're still trapped, you don't have a brain. He's saying you have the capacity to think about ways to get out of the situation. And look, this is not a time to be proud. Can I just say, this is a time to ask for help. If you need
Yes.
help,
Yes.
ask for
Yes.
it. You,
Ask.
God
Ask.
will provide, God will provide a way and situation that will present itself. Don't be proud. Ask for help. Get out of the situation and then, you know, then take the time to forgive yourself. You have to take the time to realize that um this traumatic thing, this was very traumatic for you. It was very traumatic for me. I remember after I left the business, a week after, I was sitting down in my journal in the morning and praying. And I thought, it just occurred to me, and I felt great. Can I say, I felt great? Can I just say, I just woke up one morning and realized no one has yelled at me in a week. No one has raised their voice to me. I think it was 3 days. Can I just say, and I was like, 3 days. Nobody has told me how incompetent and stupid I am in 3 days.
Wow.
And then after a few months, I was like, wow, I could get used to this.
This is a good normal.
And then after a few years, or actually after about 7 months, I recognized the fact, oh my gosh, I am not stupid. I am not incompetent. Oh my gosh, I I believed that. And look at what I've done. I've built another business. I'm making a ton of money. And I did that. And I'm really not this person that I was told I was for 12
Years.
years. 12 years, 11 years, 11 something. I'm not that person that they said I was. And I don't have
Wow.
that. That's not, I'm not. I have to tell you though, it played in my favor. One of the things I never thought would happen is that I would be able to buy the company back. When I came back to take over the company, it was because the chairman and the board, they called me and they were like, the business will be destroyed if you don't come back. Your business partner has has sued two of our clients, and something's going on, and the business is not doing well. And if you don't come back, I think we'll lose our clients and we'll lose our employees. And I have to tell you, I did not want to step back into that
No
situation.
kidding. No kidding.
Um,
Who wants to finally get out of the fire, then jump back into it?
yeah,
Holy cow.
but I did, and he was fired, although he was a partner in the business. But here's the thing about it. Here's something, ladies, for you to recognize, and guys. He believed what he'd said about me for those years. He truly believed that I was incompetent and not able to run the company. That's what he thought. He had
And
forgotten who I actually was
and the worst
because
thing about the worst thing about that is that he convinced you
he did convince me.
that you
He
were
did.
you were that person.
He did
And
convince me. I really felt like I was dumb
and that's
and
where
yeah,
that's where
and
I think that's where the trap is sprung, right?
yeah. I
And I
mean,
mean, seriously.
I knew what my IQ
Yeah.
was. Can I just say, I know how I know my IQ.
Yeah.
That didn't help. The fact
Yeah.
that I'd graduated
Wow.
with honors from universities, that didn't help me. The fact that I was in the top of my class and the top of anything that I did, that didn't help me. That I had amazing self-esteem, but he destroyed it. And that's the truth. I allowed
Yeah.
him to destroy it because
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
recognize what was happening.
Yeah.
But here's the good thing and the way that it played out. Because of that, he sold the company to me at a very low price, believing that I could never make it work. And I
Wow.
a hundredfold sold that company for 100-fold what I bought
Wow.
it from him for. 100,
Good for
well,
you.
actually 100, well, more than that.
Okay.
An
Okay.
enormous amount more. Guys, can I just say that And once I had, but think about how that played out. The fact that he believed that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
he he would never have done anything that he thought would benefit me. He had actually started another company with the resources of our company during the time that we were doing it. So he was going to, because I was 50% owner, he was going to leave me with my 50% of nothing. And he would have already built this other company that he tried to
Wow.
after he left. And I didn't see success from that, but I'm not going to go there.
So there,
So yeah,
so you have that's a twist.
yeah.
That's kind of a nice twist at the end of a tragic story. But the twist that I referred to, folks, at the very beginning, it's hard to forgive others. You know this, right? Um,
Mm,
and a lot of times it's hardest to forgive ourselves. None of us are perfect. You're not perfect. We're not perfect.
mm-mm.
None of us are perfect. And forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for that. I'm going to be doing things today. I don't know what, but today, maybe it's 2 minutes after we end this episode, I'm going to do something that I'm going to need to forgive myself for.
So
I mean, yeah, yeah.
I
Go
want to
ahead.
say this. I have an incredible happy ending. Let me tell you my happy ending.
Yes,
So I went on to run that company along with the other one that I had formed, which is still going. And I made a ton of money. I made more money than I had ever dreamed of making, can I just tell you? And God really blessed that. And can I just say, I got married 4 years ago. I was so loath to get into a relationship after that at all. But I have the most amazing marriage. I've been married 4.5 years. Amazing husband. He is the, the the perfect person for me. And it is a joy to wake up every morning. If I never had anything in life and we struggled to get by and I've done waiting tables before when I was younger. I loved it. I loved working, period. But if I had to wait tables, I wouldn't care. I
yep,
would still wake
yep.
up every morning happy because I have the most amazing relationship. And my husband adopted my adult son and became a father to him and has really helped to heal a lot of those things that had been hurt in that
That's wonderful. That's
relationship with my
wonderful.
partner. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, there is a rainbow at the end. I mean, there is a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. And if you will have the courage to walk out of difficult situations, find a way out, and forgive yourself. And it doesn't have to be for things like, I mean, mine's kind of an extreme case, but I'm sure that there are things that you've done in your life that haunt you, that
All
you
of us.
regret. Yeah. Don't let those regrets steep in your heart. Forgive yourself. And if you've done things against others, ask for their forgiveness and walk away
And
from
walk
that.
away.
Get
And walk
freedom. There's
away.
so much freedom in it. Um, there's so much freedom to get. It's joyous to be able to not blame yourself consistently for terrible things that you've done
Y-
in the past. We've all done bad things. Come on, we're
You know what? You know what forgiveness allows you to do?
hmm,
It allows you to let it go. That's another one of my favorite songs
I like that
from
song too.
Frozen, right? It allows you to let it go. And I wanted to amazing, Linnell. I
So,
wanted to let the
John, you know what happens when you don't forgive and you hold that anger? That anger, if you hold anger against someone, they control you and they live
absolutely.
rent
That's right.
free in your head, guys.
Let them go.
Mm,
Let them go. And not only rent free in your head, but rent free in your heart.
mm,
And that's a more that it just becomes poison. It just becomes poison. The antidote to the poison that you have in your heart is forgiveness.
that's
And
right.
you just let it go. Let it go. Don't harbor all that stuff. Um, one of the things I wanted to share with everybody, with all of you out there, is that Lynell is going to launch a new podcast, and it's about giving hope to women. We talked about a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot to unwind in this conversation, folks. And hopefully, some of you will get inspiration. um, you know, men, women, everybody, because this is all about finding better. And Lynell, any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yes, I want you to remember that when you're in desperate situations where there's a lot of emotion, where there's a lot of drama, a lot, even abuse, um, we react to those differently depending on who you are as a person. And I'd like to say I was perfect in all those situations, but absolutely I was not. I do forgive myself for those things too, guys. There's a lot of things that we have to forgive ourselves for. And if you've done
Yeah,
something to harm people, ask for forgiveness and then walk on. It's not your
move on.
job to make them forgive you.
That's right.
It's
That's
your
right.
job to deal with your heart and the situation that you've been with. Let it
That's
go.
huge. That's huge. That's huge. You know, and that is so well said that when we want other people's forgiveness, you know, if they don't forgive you, move on.
That's right.
Move on. And because you know what, you've forgiven yourself and you can
Life is
do
too
that.
short.
It is way too short. And so with that, folks, think about it. Just know that it's always your choice. It's always your choice. And you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not the only one
Mm,
out there. And if you want help, when you need help, ask for it. Ask for it because there are people out there. There are resources out there. I mean, who knows? When you ask for help, a stray dog may come walking up to you. Who knows what's going to
that's
happen,
right.
right?
That's
But
right.
um, but it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Lynell, thank you for joining me. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you,
your
Howard.
story. I love you. God bless you. And all of you out there, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. And Lynell, if folks want to find you and reach out to you, how do they do that?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Lynell Gordon. It's a very unusual name, Lynell Gordon. And you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can message me there, or you can message me on TikTok. I'm big on social channels. Can I just tell you, I love social. So there you
All
go. Reach
right.
out to me on social networking. Or
All
you can
right.
also email me at Lynell, Lynell, at gritty, GRITTY.net. I can't
Okay.
promise I'll get quickly on that one, but sometimes that one goes to spam. But yeah.
Very cool. Okay, folks, you have it there. Bye.